Hello, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite football podcast. It's Touchline Banter with me, one of your hosts, Ruben Dario Chavez Jr., and my good friend and ball knower, Cheyenne Karimi. Cheyenne, how are you doing? Are you ready to talk about some football?
Doing pretty good. You know, the weather's getting cold here in Toronto. It's one of those, weird fall where it's like in the morning you can wear a t-shirt and like shorts, and then when you come back from work or something at the end of the night, then you're like, why is it freezing? And you're getting into like your robe and your blankets. So, I prefer if we just snow already. I'm not a big fall fan, but fall means a lot of soccer, a lot of football. We got new Champions League, we got big Premier League weekends, so it's always a good time for footy.
For sure. I'm surprised you went. So like people love fall. I think that might be the most controversial take we have today, that you don't like fall. You're anti-fall. That's fair.
I can't do it. Like just like the leaves like changing color. Everyone's like, oh, it's nice. I'm like, it's okay, I guess. And then like, although let's go to like a hay maze and let's go pumpkin picking. It's like, listen, my girlfriend's gonna hate me for this, but fall is peak gaming weather. You finish a shift, like you finish your like shift 9 to 5 or whatever. It's a little cold. Get your PS5 or your Xbox on. Get something to eat. Just get your robe. Get a little comfy, and it's gaming time, boys.
I fully agree with that. I'm not one for like all the activities people do in fall, like going to orchards and like the pumpkin pageant and stuff, and not stuff that interests me. So I'm definitely with you there. But before we get too deep into the fall talk, like you did mention, this is a big weekend for the Premier League. There might not be a lot of games that people are saying, oh, that's like a huge tie, but there is one, and it's one of the biggest derbies that exists in the Premier League. It's the North London Derby, and Arsenal obviously taking on Tottenham Hotspur. It'll be at the Spurs home field, so little bit of an advantage there for them. And even more of an advantage is that Declan Rice is suspended. As we know, he got the red card against Brighton, which we touched on our last episode. Odegaard now picked up a knock in international play when he was with Norway, and his coach even described it as the ankle didn't look too good. He's listed as doubtful, but like it's probably he's not going to play. Mikel Moreno, as we touched on in the last episode as well, or one of the last episodes, he's injured still. He's not expected to make his debut until October. Calafiori also got hurt in international duty, but he's more likely to play. So the first question before we get into any predictions is, what is Arteta going to do with the lineup? I've seen a lot of different things. People think he could line up in a 4-2-4. He could stick with his 4-3-3 and just shuffle some players. I think who he picks to start in that midfield will determine how defensive he's going to be. I don't know where you land on that.
It's a good question to ask of like, is Arteta going to take it like, precaution? Is he going to be defensive, or is he going to look at this as a game that, they have to win? They have to get the points, keep up with Man City. There's a lot of things to look at with this game. I think the defense is pretty easy to look at. I think if Calafiori isn't fit, he probably just puts Timber on the left side, even though he's more of a center back who plays right back. But he's a really good player. I like him a lot. Young, strong, good on the ball. He's pretty quick as well. And he fits that, 4 center back mold that Arteta seems to love now, and Pep seems to love as well. And I don't know, maybe it's becoming a thing in Europe. I don't like it, but it works apparently. So they know it more than us. But I think that's what's going to happen in the defense. In midfield, I think Partey has to start. I know there's been stuff going off field, and there was a whole situation there, and last season was not the best for him. But I think Partey is probably slotted 100% in that 6 role. Declan Rice, we know, isn't there. I don't think Odegaard starts given for injury, so I think he probably plays like Havertz as the quote unquote 8 or the attacking 10. I think he slots Partey just under him as a 6. And I think he's going to go maybe with Jorginho, like as like a deep lying playmaker, because I think that's his only options. Because aside from that, maybe, I don't know, he gets really creative. Maybe he plays Zinchenko in midfield, because I think he's better in the midfield. That might be a hot take, but I don't think he's a good left back. I think he's a better midfielder.
I agree that he has a lot of talent in the midfield. I'm not going to go so far to say he's not a good left back. I do think he offers stuff there, but his best position might be in the middle of the pitch. I agree with that. I agree with that for sure.
I think up top, it's probably pretty simple. I think he just goes Martinelli, Saka, and Jesus. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Jesus just comes off the bench and, he starts Havertz in that position again, and someone else plays in midfield. But it's definitely not the strongest side for Arsenal, but I would probably say I'm still backing them for a win, especially the way the Spurs defenses look. Man, they're pretty leaky. Worse than I thought they'd start.
Yeah, so some key things to know. Arsenal is unbeaten in the last 4 matches against Spurs. The last lost when Antonio Conte was still managing Spurs back in 2022. Harry Kane scored a brace in that game. And in those 4 matches that they've played since then, Spurs have yet to keep a clean sheet. So even despite some of the injuries, like you said, offensively for Arsenal, I don't think this is going to be like a 0-0 draw or it's going to be very cagey. Postecoglou's side does push and tries to win games for better or for worse. If you're a casual viewer like myself or like yourself that doesn't have a real horse in the race, we want to see goals and we want to see a match that kind of has a bit of a like flair to it. If you're a Spurs fan, maybe a part of you now more than ever is like, we could just play smart and not make mistakes. And like, because I think one thing you touched on, Arsenal needs to win this game. They already dropped points against Brighton, and it sounds crazy to call like the 4th game of the Premier League season a must win. But when you're trying to keep up with Manchester City, it does feel that way. And especially in this kind of rivalry game that they have. So I agree with you. In terms of the lineup, Partey has to start. Like he's locked on. I think their best lineup and their best move is kind of what you described, putting Jorginho in, putting Havertz as the attacking midfield. And yeah, from there, it just depends on what he wants to go with the front 3. Jesus has been kind of battling injury, hasn't featured since the first game because of a groin injury. So I guess his fitness will also determine some of what happens here. I doubt he's going to stray far away from the 4-3-3 though. So I do think largely you're right. It could be room for Sterling to start if Jesus isn't fit, or even if he wants, because Martinelli hasn't been at his best this season so far either. So maybe he just wants somebody who's a little more reliable, or has something to prove. It can be said of Raheem Sterling, but I'm still with you. I lean Arsenal win.
Okay.
We have to acknowledge though, Solanke is coming back for Spurs. So
yes, that is big. That is really big. I do like Solanke a lot.
Yeah, and again, he's more of a goal threat than what they have there when he's not there, right? So, and we've said this is a very attacking team. Still, though, because of how cautious Arteta is and how much more sound the defense is for Arsenal, I'm still going to pick them to win. It's going to be a lot closer because Odegaard is a huge hole.
Huge. He's the one who connects basically the midfield to the offense and even the defense a lot of times as well, because he kind of drops in and picks up the ball really from the deep lying positions. But I think when I look at this game, I think I'm probably going to go 2-1 Arsenal. And I think the biggest thing is that, sometimes like Pep over tinkers and he'll play like Gundogan in a Champions League final as a number 10. A number 9, and I'm not mentioning Pep. I'm making.
No, I know, but
an example.
I remember that final. That was the. Oh my god,
the Chelsea final.
Chelsea one. Yeah, that was when the Tuchel beat, and because it was like everybody was just like, why
not start Aguero?
Why not start Aguero?
Yeah. But anyway, my point is that
derailed you.
No, you're good. It's always funny to look at those genius moves from Pep. But my point is I think when you look at it at Arteta, he doesn't really do that as much as Pep. He doesn't really over tinker, even though I would say they're kind of cut from the same cloth. At least, he worked under Pep and he learned a lot from him. And the systems are very similar. He doesn't really do that, and I think that's really an advantage to him, because a lot of times he will get a point or he'll draw out a really rough and kind of like not the best performance win. But that's the quote unquote. That's how titles are won, when you win when you're not playing the best. So I think that's a big thing. And a lot of time, I think the only way Spurs win this game is really on the counterattack. I think with the speed they have with Son and, even Kulusevski's pretty good. They played him as like a kind of a striker, but he was kind of like switching positions with Son a bit. But they signed Wilson Odobert on the right side. I think he was a pretty good young signing, especially for the money that they got. And they have the likes of Brendan Johnson. And, we talked about Solanke. So I think the only way they win, and Madison in behind as well as the number 10, is on the counterattack, because I think Pep will look to control this game. They might not score a lot of goals. They might not score pretty goals. It might be a set piece. It might even be, sorry, not Pep. I think I said Pep. I meant Arteta.
You did say Pep, but I was going to tell you after. It's okay. They're the same.
They're the same. Anyway, I meant Arteta. I think Arteta is going to look to control the game. The only thing I could see him to do is to be like a little, a little cheeky. Maybe Sterling plays as the number 9. Maybe he plays as the center forward position, which I don't think he will, especially because he just signed. But you never know. Maybe he surprises him and he uses that pace to get in behind. But 2-1 Arsenal is what I'm going.
Yeah, scoreline, I'm pretty similar. I don't think that Arsenal's going to keep a clean sheet. I definitely don't think Spurs are going to keep a clean sheet. But to your point, I do think, like, if you're going to put a bet of what the scoreline will be at half, I think it'll be a draw. I think it'll be 0-0 just because Arsenal is going to look to control the game. They're not going to look to overextend themselves. They're not going to look to take any crazy risks. He is from the Pep Guardiola school. I agree he's not as much of a tinkerer. He does seem to just be like, not overthink things. But again, it's still, you're left in a position where you're missing two of your best players and two players that don't have an obvious replacement within your squad. Declan Rice and Odegaard both do so much for that team. And even in like some of the stats that I found about Odegaard, he was third in assists in the Premier League last year, first in expected assists. Not that that really matters, but it's something. He was also number one in possessions won in the final third. So he's so important, like you said, to what the team does defensively, not even just offensively, that Pep is going to err. Pep, I'm doing it too. Arteta is going to err on the side of caution and look to control the game and reduce errors as opposed to doing much. I think 2-1's a fair score. I could easily see this being like Arsenal late goal off of a set piece in the 90th minute, and then that's it. They just see it out. And
yeah, Gabriel Magalhaes like header on the 90th minute.
Yeah,
1-0 Arsenal.
Yeah, it's yeah. But for Spurs, I know Postecoglou. I guess this is my last thing, and I'll pass it back to you if you want to say anything. On the Spurs side of it, because obviously Arsenal have all these expectations about once again pushing for the league and maybe actually winning it this year. For the Spurs, I wonder if Postecoglou needs to start getting results out of these games and looking a certain way in these games. Because last season, people gave him a lot of latitude, being like, oh, it's exciting. It's a new coach. It was new, fresh. It's fun. He's a really cool guy. He says mate, and he's very like relatable. Well, honestly, that stuff is what endeared him to the fans as a whole. But eventually you want to start seeing results. I think Spurs fans would be aiming, if not Champions League, Europa League again, and like trying to push for a top 4 placement. So I don't know. I do wonder if he loses this game in a bad way or they don't look good, if questions will start to be asked, uncomfortable ones. I don't know where you land on that.
I think they still give him time. I think given what happened last year and how he's still acclimatizing and, they're still getting like their transfers in and getting some better players. And I think they know that the squad isn't exactly where it's supposed to be, especially kind of in the midfield there in the defense. The Solanke's just coming in. So I think they give him time. Obviously, if he loses poorly in a North London derby, Spurs fans are not going to be happy. But, against Newcastle 2-1, they didn't look great. I don't think either team was really amazing in that game. But that's a team that I think I match up Spurs against. Newcastle Spurs are kind of that 4th, 5th place squad. So I wouldn't say it was a terrible result, but I think he gets time. So it'll be a good game, though. I'm interested to watch it.
I think largely you're right. But we'll move on. Some of the other major storylines in the Prem. We've talked about United, it feels a lot, and we've touched on Chelsea here and there because of some of their shenanigans, I guess we'll say. Both teams are kind of in a crisis right now. Chelsea's extends to the boardroom where Clear Lake and Todd Bowley, the ownership, there seems to be fractures, and a lot of it seems to be on the stadium, the long-term prospects, the sporting decisions. It seems that they're divided on a lot. And obviously United just can't win games. United's coming off of that 3-0 loss to Liverpool. Chelsea drew with Palace. They both have, I think, what you would say are winnable games. United's playing Southampton and Chelsea's playing Bournemouth. Who do you think needs the win the most out of the two?
I think it's a pretty obvious answer in United. I think people know Chelsea is Chelsea. They have more players than NFL teams at this point, and they are, they got a new coach in, and Maresca is a yes man. I think that's what they hired him. But Chelsea fans might not like that, but I think that's exactly why Maresca is in the position, because I think the board didn't want Sterling, and they told Maresca get rid of him, tell him he's not there, and that's what he did. He said, "Yeah, you're good. Find a new team." I think with Chelsea, even if they do lose, it's not going to look great. I think given like the first few results where, they did play pretty well, especially against Wolves in the 6-2 win. I think that did give a lot of Chelsea fans a big high. Madueke was looking good. There's still questions about Enzo Fernandez, like one of the most expensive midfielders in the Premier League. Is he that great? I don't know. Is it the World Cup thing all over again where teams are just signing blank checks? Because I'm looking at that midfield And I honestly think that, like, let's say they play Cole Palmer as the 10. I think in behind, Lavia and Caicedo look better as the two like holding midfielders behind him. I don't know what Enzo's best position is. So I think that's the biggest problem. And I think if they lose, it might narrow in like kind of more criticism towards these players that are big signings and haven't like performed, specifically Fernandez. But I think the bigger loss, the bigger team that needs the win is definitely United. And especially if they don't look good again, I'm going to say it again. I think Ten Hag could be out by October.
Yeah, I mean, that is the official stance of the Touchline Banter podcast. That if Ten Hag, he can't keep getting away with FA Cup wins.
He can't keep getting away with
it. Honestly, you're right that United needs to win more, but you're also right that I think people are just giving Chelsea a pass. I mean, these are the two biggest quote-unquote banter clubs right now that are easy to make fun of. Chelsea for all of their sporting decisions off the pitch, it seems, because that is so crazy. And now there's this beef between the ownership. People are, I don't want to say giving them a pass, but no one expects a coherent squad out there. So it's almost like if they lose, people are like, yeah, of course they lost. There's no direction to this team right now and everything's insane. Whereas United, yeah, people are kind of tired of the whole thing. And the ownership, at least on some degree, depending on how you feel about the new owners, is settled a bit. So it's like results need to start to come. I do wonder, I mean, like if you're a United fan and Ten Hag gets fired, like there's a non-0% chance that they go after Gareth Southgate. And are you happy about that?
Oh my God. I didn't even think of that. Oh my God.
Honestly, because right now he's not in the job. And who knows what Gareth Southgate's next job will be. I doubt he's going to stick in international management. Why else? Why would you want to manage another country that isn't England? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense. At least not another European country. It's not like Spain's going to come knocking his door or France. Any job he would take would be a lower position than he left at England, and he would not. Obviously, he wouldn't be able to reach the same heights because they probably won't have the same quality of player. So you would assume club management is where he's going to go. And I would also assume that United are one of the few teams dumb enough to take a risk. Honestly.
Oh, so, boy.
Does that make you happy? No, I do think United needs it more. On the Enzo Fernandez thing, he's got a little bit of the Conor Gallagher in him. And I know people sometimes bash Conor Gallagher for like the things that people say about him. He runs a lot and he tries real hard. But that's what else does Enzo do? Like, I don't see this special player. And we have to, international football so different, more now than ever. Like the systems that they play are more simplified. And he was playing on an Argentina squad that's talented and loaded with players. I feel it's a lot like Pogba. Not that he's as good as Pogba. No, Pogba, like on his day, was one of the best midfielders in the world. But that same thing where it's like Pogba in the center of France looked incredible because Conte was right beside him. Pogba in the middle of Juventus was incredible because he had,
Andrea Pirlo.
Yeah, Pirlo
and
Vidal. Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, it's easy to look good when everything around you is good and working. It's a lot harder to look good when things are crazy. Does that mean Enzo is not a good player? No, I think he could contribute to a lot of teams. He's not the kind of player you should spend that money on if you have nothing else around you like locked down. And that's kind of where I think he's at.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that I don't think Enzo is a Premier League player.
I agree with that too.
I think he might be good in Spain. He might be good in Italy. But I don't think his game style and the way he gets bullied on the ball and the way he kind of has a lot of defensive deficiencies, it shows a lot. And you said it best. In Argentina, that squad was basically built around, Messi and Lautaro and Di Maria and all the players around him. And you had McAllister playing, who was absolutely so much more vital for that team, in my opinion, than Enzo was. Enzo had a lot of good, assists and passes and good highlight reel plays, but I never got it, to be honest. I might be kind of, not, this might be a hot take, but like, I never got the big signing. I was like, really, Enzo? I would have thought McAllister. I mean, he went to Liverpool, but like, I would have thought McAllister would have been seen as the better player, but for some reason Enzo was. So I think he's a good player, and I think he's talented, and I don't think Chelsea was the right move for him, and I think he made the wrong decision. I think he has time, and I think if he can customize himself to the Premier League, it will be good. But I would argue that between the two matches that Chelsea definitely has the tougher task playing against Bournemouth, They've looked better, a lot better than Southampton has. Southampton has definitely been on the down for a few years now. You know, they're not the old Southampton where you go to St. Mary's and it's pretty tough to play and they play some exciting football. So I think Chelsea definitely has a tougher task, and I could see them possibly like draw. I don't think they'll lose, but you know, anything's possible in the Premier League. I would say, I'm gonna, even though I don't like Ten Hag and I'm not impressed with United, I would say that United does get the win against Southampton. I think it's probably like a 2-0 or something like that, or 3-1 maybe, some counterattack stuff going on. Maybe Garnacho gets a goal going.
It's gonna make me mad. I agree that they'll win, but I don't even think they're gonna look that impressive. I think it'll be like a 1-0 win, and it'll be like a scuffed goal. I also think that Chelsea will beat Bournemouth. It is a tougher task, and that kind of goes into the whole United needs this win more, I think. But I think both teams will win and at least keep the Wolves at bay for another day. And the fans of that team can do with that what they will. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think this might be the last thing we touch on in the Premier League, depending on how much time we have and how much desire we have to talk about some of the other, less than lackluster ties. It's not that City and Liverpool aren't playing big teams, but obviously City's taking on Brentford. No Ivan Toney. That team is a little bit, I mean, it's a mid-table club at this point, and it has been for a little bit. And Liverpool is taking on Nottingham Forest. This is more of a jumping off point, I think, to ask two questions, one of which is the best way to beat Manchester City hoping that a points deduction actually comes through now that things are going to an independent regulator? And is Liverpool, in your opinion, set up for a title push? They're tied at the top right now with Man City. Can they sustain it?
It's so hard to say because it's early, you know, right? I don't want to jump the gun, and I don't want to, like, you know, go on the Liverpool bandwagon and be like, you know, we got it. You know, Arne Slot has come in and they've got it going. And, you know, the players who they signed last year, this is like the second season they need to get going. They've looked good. I want to see how they look against Nottingham Forest. You know, both teams are playing mid-table teams with Brentford and Forest around like the 10-ish spots. But yeah, I think if they continue to play the way they are, I don't think it's wrong to say that Liverpool is a dark horse and they could potentially win the league. And the only reason I say that City might not win the league this year is not because of their squad. It's not even because of the teams outside around them. Because I don't believe Arsenal is that much of a title challenger, even with the midfield signings they made, because I think they lack a big striker up top. I think it's the point deduction, Pep's contract, the case going over their head, all that kind of stuff. If the point deduction does come, which I don't see it happening, to be honest, if it does, I think it's going to be very, very small.
Minimal, yeah.
Yeah, or they're going to, you know, like just do some fines or something like that. But I think all these things looming over them could be the only reason that I could see Liverpool potentially coming in and Arne Slot being one of the few managers who wins in his first season as a Premier League manager, because everybody looks good. The defense looks good. The midfield looks good. The attack looks good. Everybody's good. You know, Mo Salah's coming out. You know, he's saying stuff like, you know, it's my last season. I haven't spoken. You know, he's saying all the right PR things, but you know, you never know. Maybe they start getting some results in. Salah signed in for another year. Everybody's clicking on all cylinders. You know, Szoboszlai's looking good. Gravenberch is their new defensive mid who just came out of nowhere, and Trent's, you know, banging in assists on the right side like we always know. So I think they honestly can be the biggest challenger to City this season. And it might be early to say that. I might be wrong. I might look back at this and going to be like, man, this was a terrible take. But just based off their few performances, I think they look very good.
I'm not sure if I'll push the boat out as far as you did in terms of being their biggest challengers, because I do think it's early for that. And I do wonder if their squad will hold up since they didn't bring in a ton of players. But I mean, even just bringing in Chiesa, like if he can contribute and be another option in the attack and in the midfield or wherever they choose to play him, like that could be huge. And we talked about it a little last week. Like Arne Slot's new voice seems to be resonating. I saw an article with Allison, and he basically was just like, yeah, like Arne Slot came in. He's not a complicated person. He's spoken very direct. The ideas are very clear, very easy to understand, and everybody's executing at a high level. So it does seem like there's something in the air. And to your point, like last season, as much as people try to make it a feel-good season for Jurgen Klopp once he announced that he was leaving, that was a storyline that hung over their heads, for better or worse. It's because when he announced it, they were still in the running for like 3 trophies or whatever, right? Because they were in the Europa League, they were in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, and then they ended up only winning 1, right? So and it was the one that they probably wanted the least. So hey, no offense to the Carabao Cup, but like that's the one that like if they were going to choose one to go out on, it was definitely not going to be the Carabao Cup.
That was the one that Klopp would be sending his second team, and he literally or third team, and he's literally telling all the reporters, "Yeah, like what do you think? I'm not playing the first team. There's too many results, and they won it." So
yeah, so but now that it's flipped, because even last year Salah looked discontent. There was reports of him being at odds with Pep. All that's gone now. He looks happy. New guy. He's enjoying himself again. With Klopp. Damn, Pep's in my mind. With Klopp, he was at odds with Klopp, and now he looks revitalized and under Slot, right? And even Van Dijk has come out recently, been like, I want to resign. He had a big offer from Saudi Arabia, and even he's like, I don't want the money. I want to be here and want to leave on top here, and blah, blah, blah. So everyone's saying the right things. The mood seems very high, and I think that goes a lot. And to touch on the point you made about City and all the stuff hanging over their head, like, yeah, Pep's never been, maybe because he's wants to be the good guy. Maybe he thinks he is the good guy. I guess everybody thinks they are the good guy, but he's not the type of manager to take those storylines and make it like everybody's against us. Like if Mourinho was in Pep's spot, we would never hear the end of like these charges are fraudulent and people are just trying to knock us down and they're just mad that we're winning. Basically, Pep doesn't do that. Pep is literally like, I am a football genius and I'm blessing you with this football and we play the best football. And he tries to downplay all of that. So, but as a player, if you feel that, maybe you'd want somebody to be like, hey, let's batten down the hatches. No one believes in us. It's us against everybody. And it's one of the main reasons why I think like Guardiola could never coach at a club like Madrid or Liverpool even, or those clubs that have a chip on their shoulder because they're like, we're elite and we're royalty, but people don't like us or respect us for whatever reason, or we feel hard done by. No, he needs to be at clubs where that's not as much a part of the identity. And Barcelona is the closest he got to that, where it's like there's obviously the Catalan movement and stuff, but he came at a time where everybody was unanimously positive about Barcelona, and he helped with that. Obviously, the way that they played, but everybody loved Messi and everybody loved that team, so there was never anything negative. Could he coach Barcelona now when the club president's saying all this dumb stuff and they're not paying their players and they can't afford to like register everybody? I don't know if you could handle it. So maybe that'll be enough to derail them. But I do think the Liverpool is uniquely positioned to have an influence in this title race this season, more than they were last year, for sure.
That's interesting that you say that, because I would say like Barcelona was the closest for a club to have the chip on the shoulder. But yeah, you were right. Like it was all Oasis and Messi is God and we love him and everything is great and Xavi and Iniesta and everything was positive, right? Like I was good at Barcelona.
And it helped that Madrid were like the ultimate villains at that time. Like Ramos and Pepe and even Cristiano. Like out of the two, like Cristiano is more disliked than Messi. Like,
absolutely,
easily,
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And like when I look at it, when he went to Bayern, I mean, everything was safe there, and Bayern runs the league, and the president is just basically says whatever he wants, and nobody basically bats an eye and says that it's just Bayern Munich, whatever it is, it is. So
exactly,
I do think Pep needs like a safe environment. I think he needs like I don't know if safe's the right word, but kind of like a calm and collected, and everything is in place. Everything has its spot.
Yeah,
I mean, like, so that's why I'm saying that this season, if excuse the quote, but if shit hits the fan, and all the all the charges do come in,
and 115 charges,
115 charges, do come in, and it's bad, and they do get a point deduction. And, and then there is the contract situation, and people are like, oh, why haven't you signed? What's going on? Blah, blah, this and that, whatever. So I think maybe, it could get cagey and Pep could get antsy because, he doesn't really say these things like the way Mourinho does. I wish not to speak. I put the match into disrepute. I don't speak. But like he does sometimes give you like a slight little like, oh, yeah, like we didn't play well. But the referee did do this. But, we played. And you're like, wait, what was that? And he's like, no, it's fine. So like he does those little like slight tastes he gives you. But that's the only reason I could see, like, if stuff goes bad in City, but their squad is just so good. And I mean, like, he's playing like Rico Lewis in midfield, and like, where did that come from? It's working. He just finds ways to make these players like just great on the ball players and passers, and his system seems to work, and everybody's copying him, or it seems to go that way. But to stay on track with like Liverpool being a dark horse, I do agree with you that the squad possibly, if Van Dijk does go down, we've seen that the squad basically does crumble a lot. And my question is, like, who comes in at center back? And is the Gravenberch experiment going to work at defensive mid? Is Endo going to have to go back in, and is he going to hit the ground running? So I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. And, I'd like to see the Liverpool be a big title challenger up there. They're a fun team to watch.
It would be very fun. And again, I do say, like, I think those matches between Liverpool and City are going to be worth watching, because that's where we'll really see if Liverpool's up to the test. And whenever they play Arsenal, I think those games are going to be key in really defining who's going to be the biggest opposition to City this year, because both teams are going to want to win those games. Did you want to keep on the Prem, or do you want to move on to the dessert? Let's call it.
Yeah, I think we can go to dessert. I think
we can go to dessert. All right,
big 4 or 5 for now.
Yeah, we only talked about the top team. Sorry, all we were going to say is that Wolves are in the relegation zone and they might leave, and that sucks for Wolves if you're a Wolves fan. And if you're a Newcastle fan, you'll be happy, because that probably means your team beat them. But the dessert, the dessert of the day, we're going to talk about the Champions League. Obviously, the Champions League kicks back off next week. So in our next episode, we'll probably try to talk. We're definitely going to try it. We're definitely going to talk about some of the matches on match day 1 and break that down. But right now, we're all getting accustomed to the new world that is the Champions League, and they call it the Champions League. It feels a lot like the Super League, and the reason being, we tried in the preparation of the show to find groups, just to be like, what's the hard group? What's the
oh my god,
groups don't exist anymore. That's not how things are being listed, and a part of that is probably because UEFA's like, this is the league phase, quote unquote. And it's funny because you look back in hindsight and you're like, when they took away like away goals, was it all in preparation for this? Because now you don't play teams home, like you don't play teams home and away. And if you still had the away goals, a team could be like, well, how is it fair that Madrid are getting the away goals boost against Dortmund and we're not, because we played Dortmund at home or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's funny how all these little small steps lead you to a place that you're suddenly here and you're like, oh man, Champions League groups no longer exist. But the format, as simple as I can get it, is the top 8 teams after the league phase automatically qualify. 9 through 24 then go into a 2-legged playoff, where the 8 teams that win then get seeded into the next round, in the round of 16, against those top 8 teams. Any team that is 25 to 32 or 36, however many teams.
36.
36, that's what it is. So 25 to 36 are just instantly eliminated. They don't get a chance to play off or whatever. And I don't even think they filter down to the Europa League anymore, do they? It's just like you're just knocked out, right? So
yeah,
it's a tough ask, and a lot more games, especially like. So I guess let's just start. I'm not going to ask you too many questions to start.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like the format? A, do you understand it? B,
no. I don't like the new format. There is nothing wrong with the old one. You want to expand teams, just add more groups. I don't see anything wrong. I hear the argument, for like, adapt or die. You need to change with the times. You need to innovate. You need to find new ways. Champions League makes a lot of money. No Champions League game I don't think ever was like, we have low attendance or we have attendance issues or anything like that. And there was nothing wrong with the group stage. I mean, I don't know, like, what's the best way I can put it? Like, it's like the group stage games was like a margarita pizza. You know what it is. It doesn't, like, sometimes it's really, really good and it really surprises you and it's outstanding and it hits the spot. And then, but most of the time, it's just great. It's good. It fulfills what you need. And that's what the group stage should be. It should be teams playing home and away, getting a vibe from each stadium, players getting that type of vibe of, if we do play them in that knockout round, this is what we can expect. There's chances for teams to, get a result from a bigger team if they play, away from home, or if they try to get one back in their home end. Because, like, for example, like I'm thinking of Signal Iduna Park in Dortmund. That is an absolute cauldron, and that's one of the best stadiums in Europe. And a lot of times I feel like Dortmund gets results there just because of the fans and the yellow wall and everything going on there. So I don't think there was anything wrong with the group stage, because and everything after that is basically the same from what I understand. So that's why I'm just mainly focusing on the group stage.
Yeah, because the round of 16 will still be the round of 16.
Yeah, that will still be the same. I do agree with you. I think maybe basically UEFA didn't get their Super League and they were like, well, you know what? I'm going to take my ball and I'm going home and we're going to change the rules and we're going to add 36 teams. And, you know, it does kind of look like a Super League, but, you know, not as to the extent as they first advertised it. It's a lot more teams. There are teams from, you know, lower leagues and lower countries, you know, like Club Brugge, Sparta Praha, you know, Shakhtar's in there, Salzburg, you know, teams that you would consider like, you know, lower European sides. No offense to any of those teams, but you know, it is kind of confusing. I had to read it like once or twice, and I like UEFA. If anybody from UEFA is listening, can you please just? I understand it's the league phase, but you put the teams into what is groups. They're groups, are they not groups with the way they play? Like,
yeah, because I think all the same teams play each other, right? Like,
yeah, I understand it's a league table. That's fine. But just on your website, I don't know why it's like, you know, you have Real Madrid and then people in their group and then Man City and then Bayern Munich and then Paris. And then you have Liverpool, who is in Real Madrid's group. And then you have Inter, who is in Man City's group. There's like 9 different boxes, but it could just be 4. Yeah. Fix this. UEFA, please fix this. If you don't want to call it groups, it's fine. You don't have to call it anything, but just list it the way you guys seeded them so it's easier to understand. The 9 to 25 playing, you know, knockout matches and then them getting seeded. Listen, players are already complaining about too many games going on. And, you know, everything's getting expanded. Nations League, we're adding games. And then World Cup is getting expanded to more teams and more games. And everything's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And maybe this is why you're seeing, you know, teams get massive squads now, like Chelsea and Man City and Real Madrid and all these other teams do. You have, you know, 2 or 3 players for each positions because players just can't play that many games. And I'm afraid we're going to see injuries. And I'm afraid players are going to get injured. And that's my only gripe towards it. But I will say, like, I don't think the level of competition is going to be bad. And I'm not going to say I'm not going to watch it because it's my favorite competition to watch. So it's still going to be entertaining. I just don't like the new format.
Yeah, I think you nailed the net. I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm obviously going to watch. We're doing a football podcast. It is one of my favorite competitions. It's obviously because we're Madrid fans. We have a love affair with the competition, having won it 15 times.
They own it.
We just allow other teams to win occasionally. But it's the injury. I mean, and Bernardo Silva basically came out and said that like the other day. He's like, if you don't make the top 8, that's 2 extra games. Like, he's like, the body isn't supposed to be match fit like 365 days a year. Like, and I think that's like the nail on the head. Like, we ask these guys, like every team is asking these players, okay, we want you to peak at this time. But the problem is now the national teams are also like, we need you to peak at this time. And there's so many competitions that the peaks are like every 2 or 3 weeks. Like, it's like, oh yeah, well, you have to peak for the FA Cup semifinals. But then like 2 weeks later, you're playing a quarterfinal match in the Champions League. So you have to peak for that. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot to ask of a body to be at the top consistently. And you're basically erasing. Like, it's crazy because when you look back and think about people's favorite players, the players that really took the league by storm and stuff, and players like Eden Hazard at Chelsea or Ronaldinho, these like mercurial types, right? For every Ronaldo that was training every day and taking it seriously, you had original Ronaldo who just showed up and played, and the injuries kind of let him down. But he also liked to party and drink, and he wasn't interested in being in shape 365 days a year. Exactly. But you're kind of killing that player. You're killing the player that loves to have fun and express themselves and isn't taking this as if it's like, I am a finely tuned machine, because those players can't exist anymore. We're killing them tactically with how we're playing the game, and we're killing them physically because they're not built to last like that. They just aren't. They don't have that mindset, and that's kind of sad. That's the only real thing that I have to say about it. And the last part that I don't like about it, teams don't get the home and away. So like Madrid play Stuttgart at the Bernabeu. That's their first game next week on the 17th, and that's fine. And I'm sure the Stuttgart fans that make the trip are going to be very happy that they got to go see the Santiago Bernabeu in the away section, and it'll be fun. But what about all the home fans of Stuttgart that can't travel with the team but could have gotten a ticket for the home? They're going to be deprived of seeing Real Madrid play their team at home. And that sucks. Sucks. There's no other way to say that. That sucks. And on the flip side, we played Dortmund at their home, But the Dortmund fans that could or maybe want to go travel to go see their team play in Spain at the Santiago Bernabeu don't get that opportunity because we're not playing them at our home. So that part sucks, but I'm definitely going to watch. I'm definitely excited. It would be awesome if Madrid win the first iteration of this competition, because why wouldn't it be?
Yeah. The thing I do agree with you absolutely on that, because I think that's one of the best things about football. You know, like you just away fans going to other stadiums, and it's not even about like the beef and the banter that goes on. You know, sometimes you just meet cool people and you have a great time. You go to a bar afterwards, or you're just having a good time in that stadium. That's a big thing that's going to be lost with a lot less group matches. I did think of this, and I will offer maybe like some pushback on why this could be better in terms of not having the group, like the home and away, is that I feel like it makes games count a little bit more.
Yeah, I was gonna say
that. I feel like you kind of have to quote unquote try a little harder, because you kind of know that I don't get another chance against this team, and in my next game could be harder, it could be easier.
Yeah,
and like some of the groups, specifically the one with PSG, City, Bayern, Atleti, Arsenal, and PSV, Salzburg, Girona, and Stuttgart, and they look kind of, or I don't even know if that's the correct one because Stuttgart's playing the thing. Anyway, but the matches that City and Arsenal and Atletico and Bayern and PSG play, like that set of teams, I think that's the toughest group, quote unquote, or whatever they want to call it, because that's a lot of good teams in there. And, you know, we know PSG isn't what they used to be, but I think teams are going to really have to fight more for results, and it could possibly make the group stage more interesting, because, you know, sometimes there were a couple like dull games sometimes in the group stage when it's like, you know, the fourth or fifth game and sixth game, teams know they qualified. I think most of the time it would be like, if there was like 6 groups or whatever, it would be like 4 of them, you know what's going to happen, and you know who first and second are, and there's like 2 groups of teams from there that like could qualify, and it makes it kind of interesting. So yeah, I guess it could be a little bit more intense.
To your point, last year, most of the groups were wrapped up heading into the final match day, except for like the Newcastle group with Newcastle, PSG, and I think it was Dortmund. All 3 teams were either qualifying or being knocked out, depending on the results. And Newcastle almost made it through, but I think PSG got a draw back at the Stade de France, like late. Yeah. It was a late draw, and then that knocked out Newcastle just because of goal difference or stuff. Or maybe it was Milan. But either way, I think that because the group was crazy, and Newcastle went from qualifying to maybe having a Europa spot to just being out of Europe completely based on that last day. So I do agree. That was the one positive that I think I could find. It's like, if you're Madrid, and I'm going to use the big team again as an example, but like you can substitute any big team, Liverpool, Manchester City, you can't afford like to slip or to not give the best account of yourself, purely because, again, we talked about the amount of games. You definitely want to qualify in the top 8, and stuff like goal difference and wins and points. All that stuff is going to factor into who that top 8 is. So it's going to make the games at least feel a lot more weighty, because it's like, okay, well, if you drop points here, that puts you behind the 8 ball. So, but I mean, I guess we can touch quickly on Madrid's games. They got a pretty favorable draw: Stuttgart, Lille, Dortmund, Milan, Liverpool, Atalanta, Salzburg, and Brest. Liverpool and Milan and Dortmund are the 3 toughest games, you could say. Oh, I guess Atalanta too. But
yeah,
all of those teams have their flaws and their holes. I think the hardest team is going to be Liverpool. Like we just said, Slot has them playing pretty good. So you would expect that to be a tough one. But historically, we've kind of owned them at Anfield, or in the Champions League. Like,
yeah, there was the 2-0, 2-0 comeback. You know,
yeah.
So there was.
I'm not. No disrespect to Liverpool, but I'm not super afraid. I don't know how you feel about that.
I think, you know, Liverpool is definitely going to be second in the group. I do think, you know, Atalanta and Milan and Dortmund, you know, could definitely make some tough games. They have done it before, and we know sometimes Madrid can get caught out even in the group stage in the Champions League, because, you know, you have to rest players sometimes, and, you know, a team might just get, you know, a intense, like, you know, brush of form going for them. I will say this though, when I look at the other like groups, like couple teams that I could see like possibly like, you know, not even make it out of the group stage, or even like kind of struggle a lot. PSG, I don't know, like they look kind of iffy playing against City and Bayern and Atleti and Arsenal. And like that makes me like question, even like the teams like Arsenal and Man City, in that when you're playing so many tough opponents in that first group, how does that going to affect your league stage games? There's a lot like I think that could go on there. Juve is another one that I'm not sure exactly. I know they kind of have a new like era going under Thiago Motta, but like they could be possibly one that I could see possibly struggling. So I do think like, the new level of the new like amount of teams and level of competition, the way they're seated, that they have to face. I think we could see some teams like possibly struggle and not even make it out of the group stage when they should, or be forced to play knockout games. And we know how knockout goes in Champions League. Like anything can happen.
Anything can happen. I agree with you on Paris. I hadn't really looked too closely at theirs, but they played Girona, and obviously Girona is not the same as they were last season. They lost some players, et cetera, but they're still going to be a tough out. Arsenal, PSV, who, and as far as a Dutch team would go, is the toughest one this season, especially since Ajax has fallen from grace a lot. Atleti, Bayern Munich, Salzburg, Man City, Stuttgart. Like they really only have 2 games that you're like, oh, easy, especially considering the level that they're currently at, not with any big superstars. And Juventus has a similar PSV, Leipzig, Stuttgart, Lille, Aston Villa, Man City, Bruges, and Benfica. Those are not. It's not easy. It's not easy, especially for a Juventus team that's still in flux, that still has a lot to figure out. Yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting. We're definitely going to do everything we can to get an episode out before the league kicks off next week on Tuesday. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll break down some of the Champions League stuff, and we might touch on any results on the Premier League. We're winding down. We're almost approaching
Before we
minutes.
go, I wanted to get let's do quick early predictions. Who wins? Give me your final and give me who wins the Champions League.
I'm always gonna put Real Madrid in the final. We haven't hit the ground running, but if Kylian Mbappe finds his form and we get people back healthy, we should win. We should win. So I'm picking Real Madrid to win. They'll be in the finals too. I don't think City will be there. Again, the Premier League is such a tough competition, and if this is Pep's year, like last year, I don't think he wants to leave not winning, and it would be like a historic 5th time straight. So I could see them getting a little bit burnt out. Give me like a surprise. Like, this is going to sound weird considering what I just said about the Premier League, but like I could see Arsenal doing really good in this Premier League and not doing so good in the league. Like, I could see it kind of flip on its head to what it's been recently, because the league is going to be very exacting and demanding. And while Europe will also be that, there's not a lot of teams that I think can match up with them in this, just in a way like they can in the Premier League. So Arsenal, Real Madrid, and then Real Madrid break Arsenal hearts. That's what I'm going to say.
That's a good prediction. I do like that one. I think like it's really early. It's tough to say, what's going to go on. It could be injuries. There could be teams popping up out of nowhere, but I am going to put Real Madrid in as well. We are Real Madrid fans, but tell me another team that is better than Real Madrid right now. Just when you look at that squad, you can't. So they're going to be in the final, and I'm actually going to go with Liverpool coming in that final as well.
I almost said Liverpool. Liverpool because of the European history. I almost said that.
Football heritage. I think the aura of the Champions League will be there, and I think that Real Madrid wins again, gets the trifecta again.
That would be a hat trick in the finals. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, but that's our predictions. We'll see what happens. It'll be fun.
Yeah. So before we sign off, quick little run. I just wanted to. We're not going to discuss this, but cool little quirks that happened in the international break. San Marino won their first ever competitive game, because it was a Nations League competitive game. So that's cool. It was the first game they won in like over 20 years, because they beat that same team in a friendly like 20 years ago. So congrats to San Marino. They've become kind of a meme, both in football manager career mode and in football Twitter. Everyone's second national team is San Marino, it feels like. So congrats to them and everybody who celebrates anything positive for San Marino. And the other one, a little closer to home, Canada beat the States for like the first time in a competitive game again in like over 20 years. So a massive result for Canada. And if you're a United States fan, I'm very sorry, because like the coach of Canada right now wanted to coach your team, but you guys said no, we'll stick with Greg Berhalter.
How's that going? Huh?
And
Can somebody sign Jonathan David already?
Yeah,
sign the man. Come on, it's great.
I still can't. We talked about maybe Arsenal was a step too far too soon, but it is sad that he's not playing somewhere a little more profile with how good he is. But so congrats to Canada and San Marino making noise on the international stage. We always knew you could. Cheyenne, did you want to say anything to the people before we sign off?
I think that's good. I think we covered it. There's always a lot of footy to talk about. We're excited for the Champions League. We hope you're excited as well. A lot of Premier League games to come around. We're going to, be as consistent as we can with the podcast. And I think that's it. Thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah. As always, thanks for watching. We're going to be as consistent as we can, like you said. And yeah, enjoy the football this weekend as it's coming back. Premier League, La Liga, whatever league you watch. And keep watching us, and let's get ready for some football. Take care, everybody.